your cash flow amount will be around $500 every single month. If you're looking for a way to buy your first rental property with no money, this video is for you because I'll be going over 2 examples on how you can actually get this done. And the second example, it will really blow your mind. So make sure you watch through to the end. Now let's get into the examples. Now let's say that you actually find a seller that want to sell. And I'm gonna tell you up front, it has to be a motivated seller. If the seller isn't motivated to sell, you're pretty much just wasting your time because that's the only way these type of deals would actually work. But in this example, let's say the seller has this property that's just sitting there and it is vacant and it just taking money out of their pocket every single year or every single month, and they just want to get rid of it. So as you talk to the seller and get more information on the property, the seller end up saying that they'll be willing to accept a cash offer or they'll be willing to accept you paying over time. With that in mind, you say, hey, I want to take down my first rental property. I don't want to have to put anything down. I don't have any money to put anything down on the property at closing, and I'm going to try to structure a deal that way. Sometime it may work, sometime it won't. But in this particular example, let's say that the property in tip-top condition will be worth $85,000. And when you look at the property, it's in fair condition, so of course it wouldn't be worth the full $85,000. So it needs repairs so that it can be in rentable condition to where you can put a tenant in place. And we're going to say that this property is free and clear, so that means it doesn't have any mortgage, so the loan amount on this property would be zero. Of course, it has potential equity that would be equal to $85,000. The market rents on the property will be $625, and we already know that there's no mortgage, so it'd be a $0 mortgage payment. With this type of seller finance deal, you can pretty much structure it any way that you want. You can say, hey, I want to give the seller a little bit of interest on the payments, or you don't want to give the seller any interest on the payment. You can structure it to be 3 years. You can structure it to be a 10-year term. But in this particular example, let's say that you and the seller agreed to a price of $35,000. You and the seller got deeper into the conversation, and the seller doesn't mention anything about a down payment. So the down payment to the seller is $0. And with that $0 down payment, you decide that, hey, I want to create a new loan amount of $35,000 because that's what you and the seller agreed to. And you want that loan to have a term of 3 years. So that means whatever monthly payment that you have in place, you will make that amount every single month for 3 years. And I know you probably say, well, that's not going to pay off $35,000 depending on what the monthly payment is going to be to the seller. Yes, we know that. But at the end of the 3 years, you have a balloon payment. So the balloon payment will cover the entire loan. So hopefully in that time frame, you'll be able to either refinance the loan, you can give the property back to the seller, which I wouldn't recommend doing, or you could just pay it in full. You'll see you have multiple different options when it comes to your exit strategy at the end of the loan term. And let's say that we amortize the loan for 15 years to give the seller a $194 payment. So for 3 years, you will be making a $194 payment to the seller. You won't come out of pocket at the closing table. And the crazy thing is, like I said, you can structure it any way you want to structure it. You can say, hey, I don't want to make my first payment until I get the tenant in place. So if you do got to make repairs to the property, you can say, I want to make my first payment in 3 or 4 months. It will just have to be in the agreement that you sign between you and the seller, that the seller won't receive their first payment until 3-4 months later. So that'll give you time to go in, fix the property up, bring it in rentable condition, get a tenant in place that's going to rent the property for $625 or $725, and then every month that the tenant is paying, you will deduct that $194 payment, give that to your seller, and then the remaining amount is cash flow for yourself. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. There's way more factors that come into place whenever you're taking over a rental property, because you can have vacancies, you can have repairs, you can have CapEx, you have so many different expenses, but I'm keeping the examples as simple as possible so you can get somewhat of a ground level understanding of how this would actually work. And you will see that your monthly cash flow will be around $431. Now, if you're enjoying the content so far, please just hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell so YouTube will see that this video is valuable and they'll push this video out to a larger audience. Now, let's get back into the video. So for this second example, this example is not going to be free and clear. This example actually is going to have a mortgage, so this would be more of a subject 2 existing finance example. So basically, you still can structure a $0 down payment, but you got to keep in mind that a mortgage is in place. So let's say that this particular seller is relocating out of the state and they don't have time to really go out and sell a property and they just want to get rid of it as quick as possible. They wouldn't mind if somebody just come in and take over the mortgage. That is an ideal situation. We're going to say that this particular property is in excellent condition, that is worth in top condition $353,000. The loan amount currently on the property is $200,000. The monthly payment on the property is $1,347. Market rents on the property is $2,347. So tell me you wouldn't be able to get some monthly cash flow out of that. With this particular property, you're gonna have some equity and you'll be able to get a good mortgage amount depending on how you structure the deal. Like I said before, we're gonna structure this particular deal where you're gonna have a 0 down payment. So let's say that the purchase price that you agree with you and the seller is $310,000. The down payment to the seller is 0 because the seller doesn't mention anything about a down payment. They're actually willing to make the monthly payments for the next couple of months until you're able to get a tenant in place, just like the previous example. So you can structure it that way, and you wrap the loan for 10 years. So that means at the end of the 10-year period, that's when you will have the balloon payment to finish pay off the mortgage and finish pay the amount that you agree to with the seller. And the new loan amount that you actually agree to with the seller is $110,000. So that means that $110,000 is what you're gonna pay to the seller so they can get some of their equity back. And we already know that the monthly payments will not exceed $1,347, and that includes the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So you already know anything more than that is going to be positive cash flow. But since we created that new loan amount of $110,000, that means on top of that $1,347 payment, the amount that you'll be paying to the seller on a 30-year amortization period will be $494. Now, if you did agree to have a down payment, of course, it will be less than that. But since you don't, that means that your monthly payment would be a little bit higher. And like I said, these are not set in stone numbers. You can create whatever terms you want. You can create whatever down payment you want. You can say that you want the existing loan to stay in place for the remainder of the loan term. If the seller is willing to do that, I would recommend doing that so you won't have to worry about going out and trying to get financing after 10 years or anything. You can let it just go through the whole 30-year loan term if it was a 30-year mortgage, and you won't have anything to worry about. You can just continue to collect cash flow every single month from a property that you put $0 down. Now, of course, like I said, if you have that mortgage amount of $1,347 plus the new loan amount of $494, then you know the payment that you'll be making every single month will be around $1,800. So if you can rent the property for $2,347 a month, and the amount that you got to pay to the seller and for the mortgage is around $1,800, your cash flow amount will be around $500 every single month. So it's very, very important whenever you creating a new loan to actually pay the seller some equity back, you got to keep that in mind too, because what if you don't factor that in and you actually only can rent the property for $1,900? What you think going to happen? You may have to come out of pocket every month to make sure that the mortgage and everything is paid and the seller actually gets their money. So that's very important. And as you can see, you can actually get this done with $0 out of pocket, and this can be a valuable way to pick up as many rental properties as you want, because if you go to a bank and try to get a loan on a property, you only got a certain amount of loans that you can have open at once. So this is definitely an ideal way to get this done. And then if you got to refinance after the 10 years, it's going to be way easier compared to going out trying to get a loan in the beginning stages. Now, before you attempt any of these strategies that I mentioned to you, make sure you sit down with a real estate attorney and make sure you educate yourself on subject to or seller financing before you just run and do this, because you need to make sure that you're getting the deals at the right price. You need to make sure that you're not putting yourself at risk of being sued or getting yourself in trouble, because it can definitely happen, and I've seen it happen before. So make sure that you take the time to educate yourself on this process. And even if you can get a property for $0 down, you still should have reserves for each property that you pick up. Because if you don't, what if something goes wrong? It's part of life. Things are going to go wrong. And if you don't have the funds when things are going wrong, what would you be able to do? So buying a rental property with no money at all definitely wouldn't make sense. But if you structuring it that way and you do have the reserves for the monthly payment, I don't see anything wrong with it. But like I said, just educate yourself in the process and definitely speak with a real estate attorney or financial advisor to make sure that you're making the right decision. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.